Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Please be seated. When Jesus was a sailor, we have lots of stories of Jesus near the seashore and near the boats and in the boats. But I don't think he was a fisherman, even in spite of this story. And I know Peter was not a fisherman. It's interesting that in this story in Luke, Peter owns the boat. And he's been out fishing all night with his partner, and they've caught nothing. And he's come in, and now they're cleaning their nets. I don't know why they have to clean their nets if they've never caught anything. But that's something that they're doing. They're cleaning their nets, and he's tired, and they're ready to go home. And Jesus has been preaching on the seashore, but so many people come, he decides to get in the boat and be away, so he's a little further away from them, and so the people in the back can perhaps hear him. So he gets in the boat, and he keeps talking. We don't know what he was talking about. We might imagine, but the gospel doesn't give any hint at all. But when he's finished talking, then he tells Peter, let's go back out into the deep water and see what we can catch. Peter says, hey, we've been fishing all night long and we didn't catch anything. What do you mean, But he said, okay, nevertheless, Lord, if you want, we will. And they go out and catch so many fish that the nets are breaking. And they keep catching them. And they bring another boat out and it catches some. Both boats are almost ready to sink. And they finally get ashore. Peter falls down, you heard the story here, falls down on his knees and says, Jesus, leave me, for I'm a sinful man. What is this here? Jesus has just helped him catch this great amount of fish, and he wants Jesus to go. Anyway, they get ashore, and Jesus says, come, follow me, and I'll make you fishers of men, fishers of people. And they leave all of these fish, and they go following Jesus without saying anything to their partners, to their family, to anything else. I don't believe this story happened that way. In both Matthew and Mark, who have similar kind of stories, Peter and John, James or John, are fishing at the seashore. They don't even have a boat. They're throwing nets out. They're not real fishermen. They're just sort of casting nets and trying to catch the little fish that come near shore. They probably have never gone out in the deep water, those two. Now the other two, Zebedee's sons, they have a fleet of boats. They have several boats and people working for them. They have a real going business. They've been out there. But in these stories, nobody ever catches any fish unless Jesus is there. And all of these times that they're out in the water fishing, they do go across the lake sometimes. And remember, the lake isn't that, the sea they call it, isn't that big. It's about from here to Sandy Point down there by Lummi Island, and from the mainland over just beyond where we are. That's how big it is. It's a lake in a fertile valley, mountains on both sides. It gets rough there sometimes because the willy-waws of the wind blows down the lake, and we have the storms that they're out in, and Jesus walking on the water, and they're scaring these guys, and they're going to the other side, so they're traveling across. They're not very good seamen. They wouldn't let their boat sink because they got such a heavy catch. They wouldn't go out when they know there's a storm. Now, they may be caught out. I may not be a very good seaman either. I have been caught out, even in my little rowboat, on my way down to the islands, out the same distance. And it's scary. But I was not afraid. I was not afraid. Because I know the boat, I know the sea, I know how to handle the boat in big waves. We've been in bigger waves on our bigger boats out in the ocean, and for days on end. So this was simple. I didn't think I was going to drown or anything, or the boat was going to sink. I wasn't fishing. I did have my life jacket on, which is unusual. But as I tell the Coast Guard, I'd rather die of hypothermia than drown. And so I wear a life jacket when it's rough and when I'm threatened to maybe be dumped into the water somehow or be overwhelmed. These guys probably never wore life jackets. They didn't know what they were. And there was no Coast Guard to come to help them. There was nobody but other boats that might be called to help. They weren't really seamen. But of course, us sailors never think fishermen are seamen either. But of course, fishermen are out in all kinds of weather, and often weather that I would never go out in, and intentionally. When I was on towboats, we were in heavy weather like that for days on end as well. And we were pretty much in the same place, towing this big barge up the coast. And close to shore, enough to see the cars go by on Highway 1 north of San Francisco. And I remember saying to myself, if I ever get ashore again, I will never drive fast. Well, you know how long those kinds of resolutions are like. They're like New Year's resolutions, you know. Don't last very long. So here we have a story that is different than the other Gospels about who these fishermen are. And what are we to believe? Were they real fishermen? Do they have a boat? Does it matter? Because all of them are call stories where Jesus says, come and follow me, and I will make you different. I will give you a new life. I will give you a vocation. And so these stories have been used over and over again to recruit people to be missionaries, to work at the church, to go to foreign lands, and all of that, to go into other jobs. But I don't think that's what Jesus means when he says, I will change you, I will make you fishers of people. I think what he means is that you could do that even by staying at home and having a different outlook on what your life is like and who you deal with and who you see in the grocery store or in town or on the street. How you relate to them. We don't have a lot of people begging around here, but we do have a lot of people that use the food bank. We do have a lot of people that use the community center in December when the storm went. And it's going to be open again now because everybody thinks that this is going to be a big storm, except me. I don't think it's going to be. Look at it hasn't been a big storm yet. And yet the wind has been blowing some blue boxes around that are loose in our garage that I haven't crushed up yet to take to the dump. But that's about all. In the big storm, we did have some damage. We had a tree fall, break apart and fall down and wipe out our chicken yard and my boat shop, which was in the greenhouse, which has glass everywhere. Fortunately, it's safety glass, but it comes in like tiny little ice cubes, you know. It's all over. It's not shards. And the roof is caved in on part. The boat was hardly damaged at all. But I have to take the boat out before I can do anything to fix up the greenhouse. And that's going to be taking some more of the greenhouse down. But that's not what my calling is. And what Jesus is saying when he calls you to follow him, he's talking about be like I have been. How do we see Jesus in these stories? What does he do? This story is about calling these guys and taking them away from a job that they're not very good at. They may not like it too much. They, except the sons of Zebedee who have a big business going, and he's saying, leave it all and follow me, and I will give you a new job. I will give you a job of being like me, healing people, visiting the sick, talking to them, feeding the hungry, visiting the sick. And all those things that he has done, not the miracle stories especially, but if you are really committed, you will see the miracle in people's lives as they change. You will see things that happen to them because of the way you have been ministering to them, the way you relate to them, the way you talk to them, even the talking to them and being a friend for the friendless, to being a caregiver, not necessarily a nurse or a doctor or anything, but someone who cares for the sick, who cares for the injured, who cares for someone that's in trouble. And that caring that you have, that caring changes their lives. When I went into the ministry, I felt a call, and I can't really, I've explained it to you some time before, and I may again when the time comes, but I felt that I wanted to do something more. I still wanted to be a meteorologist, but I wanted to do more. I wanted to work in the church. I wanted to devote my life to doing these things that Jesus wants us to do. And, but I didn't have any grand illusions about it. I thought, if I can make the change in the life of one or two people, I will consider my ministry of my life successful in that sense. And I never thought I would stay in the ministry as long as I have. I'll be 50 years since ordination this year, this summer. And and I've come and gone. I didn't change my vocation. I went to, when I got fired because my boss was so antagonistic to religion, and I didn't preach religion to him. In fact, he started telling me all of these worst things in the Old Testament. You believe this, you believe that. Well, I had never read the Old Testament at that point, and that wasn't what motivated me, but that gave me the incentive to go on to seminary. And I had to still support my wife and three young children. So I went back to sea for a while. I did a year's humanities, and I needed to do those where I could have a library, not out of a sea bag. And so I started several little businesses. I was a janitor for a while, cleaning the shops. I had a place that sold furniture and stuff, did home decoration with a white vinyl floor. And they moved this furniture around every day, and every night it was scrubbing and getting those black marks off the floor. Finally, a friend said, why don't you go into business in competition with the guy that fired you? You know the sea better than he does. You know all the contacts. You've been in marine operations. And so I did. And that put us through that period of time. And when I was getting toward the end of seminary, had one more year to go, I thought I need to do something to protect our investors because I'm going to go into the church. And so we merged with another company. We became the largest private meteorological company in the world. And I was not working anymore, but I did do some contacts when I was in London. And the British meteorology people wanted to pick my brain. And so I had much broader experience there than just seminary at Oxford. I worked at a mental hospital. I went to London and I worked with the British shipping companies and with, and with the meteorological service. It was a wonderful education. And I came back and worked 5.5 years in the church and continued to work in a ministry, but not in the church. I was a marriage and family counselor. I taught in community college, and I wasn't active in the church for several years. Not until we got to Lahaina, when my then wife, after crumbling across the ocean, and said, "This isn't what I had in mind," and she left me there. I thought, this is a healing place. I'm not going to go back to California, to the Bay Area. It was just time right, too, because the economy had crashed, and there was no jobs anyway. I talked to somebody from the company that I worked in. That was a startup, and it worked, by the time I left, it had 3,000 employees. And he says, there's not anybody here that you would know. They've all left. So, but I stayed, and I worked as a rigger on a ship. I did lots of fun things, just living very meagerly on my boat by myself, anchored out. No harbor fees, but made enough money doing that kind of thing to haul the boat out and fix it and all that kind of stuff. And then I met journey, anchored side by side. And life changed one more time, all for the better. She's going like this. So, what is your call? The call, it's about your call, my call, your call. What you can do well. And the way to judge that, the way to tell, is it something that you want to do? Are you really happy with your work? And is the work worthwhile? Is the place where you're working or the job you have, is it equitable? Does everybody get paid equitably? And is there room for advancement if you're working for a corporation? Or if we're working on your own, is it working out for you? And what do you do with your money that you make, besides paying your rent or mortgage or all the other stuff that you have to pay? $1,000 for propane fill or something like that. And is it something that the world needs? You know, if you really like your job and it's not something the world needs, if you have a wonderful job and you just love it, and it's selling ads for something that you don't really believe in, then that's probably not what you need to do. If you're a physician and you get bored with a job, you're probably helping the world, but it's not helping you. And you may not be helping your clients. How do you judge what you're doing? You don't have to go off and go to seminary. You don't have to change your life a lot. You do change your life a good bit, but you don't have to change your situation necessarily. But you may, and you may want to, and you may be successful at it. Listen, you know what it says in the bulletin here, if you can't sleep at night, if you're tossing around, maybe God is trying to get to you now that you have some time to listen. It says that in that little flyer there. It's a great way to think about tossing and turning at night and you can't sleep. What does God want you to do? How do you hear God's voice? Often in the New Testament, and in the Old as well, but in the New Testament especially, God speaks to people in their dreams. Most of all of the times that God is speaking, it's an angel coming in the dreams, or an angel is sort of a surrogate for God because they don't want to use his name or her name. And so pay attention to your dreams. Are they telling you something? And if you have a big dream, you don't forget it. Pay attention to it. What is it saying? What parts of those dreams are parts of you? Fish in this story, if you're looking at it psychologically, fish are the things from the unconscious that you bring up, that you catch. And if you catch them right, you learn from them. The symbol of early Christianity was a fish, ichthus. Jesus Christ, Son of God, Savior, in Greek, the letters of each of those words. And ancient, even before Christianity and pre-biblical, fish are found as symbols carved into stones and things that they've dug up. So, just because you have a bad dream about fish, I can remember a dream when I was a child. And I was underwater, like in a submarine, or looking through a window, and all of these fish were coming by and looking at me. And I woke up scared, seeing it as a nightmare. But who knows what that means, or what that meant. Catching fish, the trouble with catching fish is you catch them and kill them. And the trouble with catching, or the thing about catching people, is you catch them and make them live. So bring life to yourself, bring life to your world, and follow Christ in your vocation.